Hi there! Thanks so much for taking a look at my course, A Beginner's Guide on How to Build a Computer. My name is Nathan Cope. I'm an IT professional of more than 20 years, and I'm here to assist you in your adventures into the computer hardware world. When you complete this course, you will have the confidence and knowledge to build your own computer from scratch. Not only that, but you'll have a personal guide that will answer any questions you may have along the way. Using a classroom lecture presentation format, we'll talk about things like basic hardware terminology for a desktop computer, how to shop smart when purchasing parts, how to decide what parts to use, how to install each of those parts, how to install an operating system and software, and finally, how to keep the system updated and performing well once it's been built. If you're a curious computer user who would like to know more about how computers work, then this is the course for you. You could simply be interested in taking on a computer building project, or could just be looking for a bit of help when deciding on what specifications a computer should have based on what you'll be doing with it. This course is also great for younger students who want a simple guide on how to build their first computer. Feel free to take a look at the videos available for preview and enroll in my course knowing that there's a 100% 30-day money-back guarantee. It will be honored no matter what the problem may be. To give you a short background about myself, I'm an IT professional of more than 20 years and started out as a PC enthusiast when the IBM PC was introduced. I've owned my own computer repair business and received stellar 5-star reviews on Yelp for my broad knowledge and service experience. Enough about me though, this course is really about you. I'm here to not just supply you with a bunch of lectures, but also be a mentor and tutor into the world of custom computer building. If you're just beginning to take an interest in custom PC building, or if you've been doing it for a while and want some direction on where to go, I'm here as a resource to you. In this first series, we're going to start with an introduction into a PC and its components. We'll then look at how to choose the right parts for our first build. And finally, I'll supply some presentation-style lectures on how to build your first system. This course as it stands is really just a glimpse into what's coming later as content is added and as requests for more information are made by my students. I highly encourage you to take the course now at its current price point, as the course cost will rise as more content is added. And if you've already purchased the course, that new content is going to be free to you. Lastly, you'll notice the last section of this course is specifically set aside for Q&A, with video answers supplied by myself. Please feel free to ask questions on PC building and hardware, and I'll be happy to supply a video tutorial or lecture on whatever the subject may be in the PC building world. Once again, thanks so much for taking an interest in my course. Let's get started. Hi guys, welcome back. My name is Nathan Cope from nathancope.com, and in this section of our tutorial here, we're going to be talking about PC component terminology. So before we can build anything, we need to know what we're building with. We'll take a very quick overview into the components and what each one does. Our first system is going to comprise of the following: a computer case, a motherboard, some memory, a computer processor, a processor cooling fan and heatsink, a permanent storage device, an optical device, and of course an operating system. So let's start with a computer case. A PC computer case is what holds all of your components together. They come in a large variety of sizes, colors, and shapes. However, the important thing to look for is compatibility with the hardware you're installing. As an example, if we wanted to use a full-size motherboard, which uses the ATX standard, ATX stands for Advanced Technology Extended, developed by Intel, then we need to find a case that meets that requirement. There are lots of different sizes and form factors of motherboards: mini ITX, micro ATX, thin mini ITX, to name a few. So it's very important to look at the case specs to be sure it will fit. Since we're on the subject of motherboards, let's talk about those next. Motherboards are the most complex component of your computer. Everything inside and even outside of your computer will connect to the motherboard in some way. Motherboards are largely divided into two camps: motherboards that take processors manufactured by Intel, and motherboards that take processors manufactured by AMD. AMD is generally the cheaper of the two manufacturers for processors. When we take a closer look at the components we'll use to build our computer, I'll take some extra time to go over the motherboard example we're using in our first build. There's lots of components on the motherboard, and I feel it's important for my students to have a pretty good understanding of what goes on a motherboard and what each part of it does. Let's move on to processors. A processor, or CPU, which stands for Central Processing Unit, or APU, which stands for Advanced or Accelerated Processing Unit, is the central location where all data and commands are processed. Every bit of information runs through your processor when your computer does various tasks, and it does all of that very, very fast. There are a ton of different processors, and it can get a bit dizzying figuring out which one to buy, but this course is designed to ease that pain, and I'll show you later how we'll do that. Installation of a processor into motherboard is probably the trickiest part of putting together a computer, apart from installing a water cooling system, and we'll be sure to go through that part thoroughly. So on to processor cooling. There are two primary ways to cool a processor. Both involve attaching something to the motherboard that holds the cooling unit to the processor, and both involve using thermal grease between the cooling unit and the CPU to be sure the heat is transferred completely. In our first build, we're going to use a stock fan that comes with the processor, but enhanced cooling fans and heat sinks, as well as water cooling that includes a pump, a water block, and a radiator, are other possibilities to keep your processor workhorse cool. Next up is memory. Memory, or RAM, which stands for Random Access Memory, is the component that holds information temporarily. It's a place to put things that need to be accessed quickly. For instance, the video viewer you're using right now to view this lecture is loaded into RAM so it can be used. When you open up an internet browser on your computer, it loads the program from your hard disk, which is an example of permanent storage, and into RAM to be used. Desktop RAM is installed as sticks of various speeds and form factors. We'll look at the differences a bit later, but for now, let's move on to permanent storage. Permanent storage is a general term for where your data is stored when your computer is turned off. They can be things like hard disks, solid-state disks or SSDs, CDs, DVDs, and other optical media. Hard disks use a magnetic platter to store data, and the platter spins while a magnetic head reads and writes data to the disk. SSDs are very much like RAM, but a little bit slower and can permanently store data when the system is off. CDs and DVDs have their data burned to the media physically. When we build our first computer, I'm going to recommend an SSD as your permanent storage solution because of the incredibly enhanced performance over classic spindle hard disks. We'll also add a rewritable optical drive to make installation of our operating system easier. So we can't really do anything with the computer if we don't have a way to power all the components. So let's take a look at power supplies. The most important thing to think about with power supplies is the wattage and the connectors it uses. When buying a new computer that's been assembled for you by a manufacturer like HP or Dell, the wattage requirement has already been thought out. If we're building our own system, we need to think about this number. Generally, a desktop will come with a video card, and that video card is going to have the highest pull of power out of all other components. You can generally go by the suggested system power requirement from the manufacturer of the card as your guide. I like to add another 100 watts to that number in case I want to upgrade and to give the power supply some breathing room. In our case though, our first computer is going to include an APU processor, which actually includes the video processing right on the chip. So we don't have the video card as a guide in this case. So what we'll do is we'll end up looking at the power requirements of each component and adding them up to decide on a power supply. Regarding the connectors on a power supply, it's important to know what power connectors your system will require before purchasing that power supply. Our system is pretty lean on connector requirements, so we'll have a pretty easy time finding a power supply to suit our needs. In the power supply world, there's a type of power supply called a modular power supply. I highly recommend these as they lessen the number of cables that you have to manage inside the computer case. Modular means the cables can be disconnected from the power supply and stored away for later when you want to upgrade your system with more components or even different components. So we've got all the hardware components of the computer and it powers up, but we can't interact with it. So how do we make use of these components? That's where software comes in, and the main software in a computer to make it usable is called the operating system. There are lots of operating systems and versions available from Windows to Mac OS to Linux, but for our build we're going to be using Windows 7. Windows 8 is available, but as an IT professional, I feel 7 is still the better operating system and has a better interface to understand. At this time, Windows 10 is on its way and it's looking pretty good, so if it's out by the time you take this lecture, I recommend going that route. So we've taken a look at all the components we need to build our basic system. Next, we'll take a look at how to look for parts online in a smart way that gets you the most bang for your buck.